From the blind eternities to your favorite local game store, welcome to Planeswalker Radio, your ultimate source for all things Magic the Gathering. Whether you're slinging spells at Friday Night Magic, brewing the perfect deck, or just diving into the lore of the multiverse, we've got you covered. Join us as we explore the latest set releases, wild deck techs, and the stories behind the cards we love. So grab your deck, shuffle up, and get ready to ignite your spark, because this is Planeswalker Radio. Here at Planeswalker Radio, we love turning cardboard sideways and slinging spells, and it's important to us that the place we choose to do that is fun, relaxed, and professional. That's why we choose to buy our cards and accessories at First Player. Their showroom staff in Calgary, Alberta are some of the best in the business with decades of experience. They're always able to help us and members of the community find exactly the correct cards to add to our latest decks. Don't live in Calgary, Alberta? Not to worry, they ship Canada-wide. Check out their website at firstplayer.ca for Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Lorcana, and the accessories to protect your cards. First Player, the heart of the gaming community in the heart of Calgary, Alberta. Find their website linked in the description below. Don't go anywhere, the show is about to begin.
What's up, Nerd Home? Welcome to Planeswalker Radio. I'm back here with my co-host Reuben today. My name is Lee, for those of you who don't know. And today we're taking the next step in our journey towards mastery of the game of Magic. Today we're talking about our intermediate commander player skills.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, should be a good one, guys.
Yep.
We're gonna try and keep this one short and sweet for you, so we'll jump straight on in. We're going to start with the first step of really starting to advance yourself out of that beginner role into a more intermediate player. And that starts with game mechanics and sequencing.
Yes. Okay, so first of all, we're going to be understanding priority and timing windows within the multiplayer game.
Yeah, I mean, this is really where you start picking up
Yeah.
how to play your turn.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
This is one of the first skills that you should learn, or at least pick up. While you're a beginner, you just focus on your board and you put out things on your turn, and it's kind of people are like, oh, I play this, okay, great, yeah, I don't really care about anything until it comes back to me. But now you should be having a board-wide perspective.
This is where you start paying attention to other people's boards. You're starting to look at your instant spells that you have, things that you can play with flash, and that's really where priority comes in, and understanding how to play within priority.
So priority happens when you cast a spell. You maintain priority on your own turn, and once you've cast a spell, priority turns to clockwise.
Yeah,
so
clockwise
it'll be
around
the
the
person
table.
on your left, and then around the table until it comes back to you. People can pass and say, no, I don't want to interact with this, or I don't have anything to pass priority. And then when it comes back to you, the stack is resolved, and whatever you do is cast.
Whatever spell you cast, it goes into play. The last part of sequencing that really we need to get into is your commander. Now, in a game of commander, this is technically your most important piece. Knowing when to play it and how to play it effectively is an important part of leveling up.
Yeah.
Knowing that realistically you should have some protection on the board for it, or a way to have
go into it knowing what you're going to do with it.
Exactly.
Don't just cast it for the sake of casting it. Or I have a 4-drop commander. It's turn 4. I have 4 land. There it is. Don't just do that.
Learning to time your commander drops, because typically speaking, if you built your deck well and you have a good commander, there's a large chance your commander is going to be taken out relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So knowing how to sequence your commander coming out in such a way that it doesn't die immediately and you don't have to pay 2 more mana for it on the next turn, and eventually it gets boxed out if you let it get killed too many times.
If your deck is built specifically around your commander, you can kind of get away with, there are some decks where it's like, the commander is there, but it's only really to give you the colors you want or whatever. But that's
not as an important piece. But if you're playing a Voltron deck or something like that,
have maybe something ready to go, like a Swiftfoot Boots or a Whispersilk Cloak, some way to ensure that your commander sticks around, does what it needs to do, and especially if you're playing a very well-known, hated commander, or your commander has a reputation.
But touching on that, don't get Grand Arbiter Augustine until you are an advanced player. It's terrible for anybody who's not. Moving forward, that's for you, Jeff. Moving forward, Deck understanding and role clarity. I mean, this is really trying to figure out how your deck is supposed to perform within the pod.
Yeah.
We talk about things like a group hug deck or an aristocrat deck or
Touching on rule zero at the beginning of the
yeah,
game and being, oh, my deck does this. Okay, maybe I won't play this, and matching yourself correctly to the pod is one of the better plays that you can make as
yeah.
a Magic player.
And understanding that if you are playing a group slug, which is where you hate on the entire table all at once, you're going to be the enemy, and don't be bummed out if you're the enemy. It's just the nature
Take
of the deck you're
pride.
playing.
Take pride in being the arch enemy. If you've gotten to be an arch enemy, you're doing something right.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
are making progress.
And one of those things you're probably doing right is using ramp and card draw to stay relevant in the game.
Yes.
Making sure that you're really targeting getting your extra lands, your mana rocks, your mana dorks out on the battlefield relatively
Yeah.
early if possible, but as soon as you're able to is really the end goal. Because the more mana you have to play with, the more land you have to play
Yep.
with, the more you're going to be able to affect the board.
It touches what we talked about earlier as well, organizing your triggers and making the optimal plays.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. With knowing your deck comes a certain advantage of being able to know how your deck is paced. Knowing when you should be swinging out. You know, if everyone at the table only has one or two creatures and you are playing green and you have 10 Stompy Boys out on the battlefield, you're probably going to want to start swinging out and trying to take out some of your opponents
Immediately.
pretty much immediately.
Yep.
But also knowing that if it's late game and maybe one person isn't doing so well and another person's doing really well and you're kind of in the middle, making sure that you're aware of where the threat lies and how to pace your further growth from this point to make sure you're achieving your deck's end goal. At the end of the day, we all want to try and win. You should know how your deck wins.
Yeah. It comes back to having that board wide presence of knowing what's in everybody's board. Look at the amount of cards that they have in hand. What colors are they playing? What kind of
Yeah.
responses? If you get to terminal velocity and you have to swing in for the win, otherwise everybody's going to catch up and, potentially take you out
Yeah, win on
because you're
their
the
turn
threat.
or take
Yeah.
you out. Yeah.
You absolutely should dive in for the win and,
At the
you
same
know,
time, saying that, don't leave yourself vulnerable to a counterattack. You obviously need to still be playing to your deck strengths,
yeah,
but making sure that other people can't play to theirs and just wipe you on your turn.
yeah,
It's really, this is where juggling as an intermediate player, juggling threat assessment, knowing what other colors do, like Reuben said earlier. Black has probably got a couple board wipes. Blue's probably got a couple counter spells. You should be aware of those things
yeah.
that can happen to you
Looking
as
at
you try and
people's
win the game.
untapped mana. Can they
Exactly.
respond? Um, do they have planeswalkers that, do they have creatures that they can tap? Artifacts,
Yeah.
anything that they can do. Try and keep in mind what people have on their board states and act accordingly.
Yeah. And as you get to the end of the game, guys, knowing how you should take out your opponents is, and by how I mean in which order, how you should take out your opponents to make sure that you guarantee yourself the easiest route to a win. There's going to be someone else at the table, even if you're the arch enemy, there's going to be someone else at the table with a bigger board state than the two others. You probably want to try and deal with that person first.
Yeah, if you get later into the game, there's usually somebody that has fallen behind so drastically that everybody's just kind of leaving them alone to try and build a board state to get them back into the game.
Yeah,
And then there's one or two other people that are fairly in the game
yeah,
with you, and knowing, okay, he's playing a token deck, he's got a very wide board. Do I have flyers? Can I make things unblockable? Can I get value from killing creatures?
yeah,
Or there's a guy that has a Voltron commander and is insanely powerful. Do I have a way to get around the commander? What is my cost to, benefit of taking out creatures?
yeah.
How much damage can I get through this turn so that potentially I can take them out with some kind of, spell on their turn,
Yeah.
board wipe,
Once again, guys, knowing your deck, knowing how it plays, and having at least a basic understanding of how the different colors play is going to be really key to becoming a better player and a more intermediate player. The other thing that I do want to touch on here is as intermediate players, we do have slightly more of a responsibility. Not as much as an advanced player or a master player, but we do have slightly more responsibility to make sure everybody at the table is having fun. As you get better at Magic, your responsibility to make sure everybody at the table is having fun increases. At an intermediate level, it's not as important, but you should still be making sure if there is someone who is brand new at your table, they're green, they don't know what they're doing, make sure you're giving them some grace. Let them
Yeah,
take a little bit of time with their turns. If they
absolutely.
have questions, don't hesitate to answer. If you don't know the answer,
Find somebody that
find
does.
somebody that does. Find the
Yeah.
advanced player, even if they're in another pod, find the advanced player who can help.
It's totally okay to reach over to another pod and be like, hey, does anybody know how this resolves? Or,
Absolutely.
do we know where this would land in the stack?
Yeah. Yeah.
Combat and threat management is our next topic.
The bread and butter of playing Magic. Realistically, if you're not doing combat stuff, you're probably playing group hug.
That's right.
I mean,
First of all, we're going to touch on profitable tags.
yeah, making sure that every creature you swing has a purpose. You shouldn't be blindly swinging 20 creatures at one person, hoping something goes through when they're playing a token deck. making
Yeah.
sure making sure that every creature is getting you a result that you're going for.
I actually think I was fairly lucky to have that kind of start because I played Lag primarily. So when I was talking with, all the guys that were getting me into Magic, I was like, these are the kind of, these are the kind of mechanics that I like in other games is using my life to get value out of stuff.
Yeah.
And, like playing Warlock classes, Blood Magic and such. And that has followed through to my intermediate to slightly advanced plays.
Yeah.
Is getting value from my creatures, other people's creatures, and them not really being able to do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a black player, I don't really swing in too much, but when I do, I need purpose, profit, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Great example from Reuben here is as a black player, typically you want things to die when you swing. So
Yeah.
whether it's your creatures or
Death
the other
touch,
people's,
lifelink.
yeah.
I need death triggers from creatures to feed me with card draw or with +1/+1 tokens to go on
Yeah.
other creatures. I need lots of value
Yeah.
from my attacks.
And outside of black, I mean, there's a lot of combat tricks. So, sometimes there's an attack trigger. So when your creature attacks, it gets a benefit that
Yeah,
happens.
dealing combat damage
Combat damage is
is a
sometimes an
big one.
attack trigger, right? So you need to understand what your creatures do, when they trigger, how they trigger, and where it's going to be profitable to swing them. Realistically, if you have a creature that's a 3/3 that triggers on combat damage and your opponent has a board full of 4/4s, probably not
Yeah,
profitable to swing
probably
there.
not.
Even if it has an attack trigger, you may want the creature more than you want the trigger it does.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're aware of where a profitable attack comes from.
It also comes into I want creatures to die, or if you're playing black green, you're playing Merrin, you want creatures to die to give you, you want temporary creatures to die that go into your graveyard that give you permanent benefits.
Yeah.
You get the experience tokens, or you get, other creatures. You get treasure tokens that come in. You get card draw. You get to go and find land.
Yeah. Lots of different triggers can happen off
And there's
attack.
so many creatures out there. Pretty much every creature in Magic has something it does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
read the text
Making
careful.
sure you're using the right creatures for the right thing.
Yeah.
The other thing to go along with that is making sure you're not overextending yourself. If you have 20
Yeah.
creatures out on the board, that's fantastic. But if you swing all 20 of them, you have no blockers. You are vulnerable.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're not overextending your board state, making sure you're making smart plays, picking your opponents wisely, picking your targets wisely, and moving on from
Yes.
there. And that kind of bumps us into basic threat assessment.
Yeah, it does. You should be the threat at that point.
Hopefully, if you have 20 creatures, you're the threat.
The goal of your goal in Magic should be to become the threat at some point within the game. I'm gonna give you a situation. I bring in Sanguine Bond.
I don't know what that does.
You don't know what it does. You can read it, but it's on my field. And then I bring in Exquisite Blood. Probably the most well-known 2-card combo.
Realistically, I do know what that does.
Yes.
But for the sake of this.
Player seeing the first card and not recognizing that it is part of an infinite combo, that's fine. But seeing the second card come in and recognizing that it is a winning combination,
Yeah.
you can react to the second card coming in at instant speed and saving the game.
Yeah. Being an intermediate player is not about predicting just because this person has black in their deck, they have this combo. It's about knowing that as soon as that second card hits and being able to recognize that second card as they win the game if I don't deal with it, and having a response to be able to deal with that.
Yeah.
And that leads us into making sure that you have mana open for those responses. As an intermediate player, you should absolutely always be trying to set up your board states, especially if you have the cards in hand. Or if you're playing blue, you just leave always one blue, one blue
Yeah,
open
leave it up
available to you,
just to
just to
mess with
mess with
people.
everybody.
Yeah.
But leaving that mana untapped and being able to deal with those high priority threats at instant speed, like a
Even if you
two-card winning
don't
game
have anything,
game-winning
if you
combo.
don't have a murder in your hand, if you don't have a dismember, if you don't have anything, just maybe if you can see that the game is coming to a pivotal point, just leave mana open. Maybe leave like 3 mana open.
Yeah, a
So
little bit
that
of a psychological
people
warfare.
will look over, maybe advanced players will look over at you and be like, why would they leave the mana up if they didn't have something?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of psychological warfare, which,
A little bit.
funnily enough, moves us into our next section: politics and multiplayer awareness. Making sure that you are really focused on trying to talk yourself out of situations. This is where you get
This
into that.
is probably one of my least practiced skills is because I'm in the background anyway. I don't like to be the big stompy player at the table. I like to be doing stuff in the back. So whenever I try and politic my way out of something, it rarely ever works because I don't have much to offer.
Fair.
But if you have a big board presence and you can say, look, I need you to leave me alone for one turn, I'll leave you alone. Let's just shake hands on it and
Yeah.
make a deal.
Setting up a temporary alliance is a good way to position yourself well for a turn or two, maybe. Don't let those alliances drag on because then it becomes no fun for the other people at the table. But being able to politic your way and really talk to the people around you and kind of be a little bit lighthearted about it, but I have a 10-10 with trample on the field.
Yeah.
I won't swing it at you if you let me play this next spell. And you say that to the blue
Yeah,
player who conveniently left a blue mana
yeah,
open,
exactly.
right? And that blue player is playing politics by not having a counterspell in his hand to play anyway, but saying, "Sure, don't attack me, and I won't
There's a
counterspell
lot
you."
of ways that you can go about it as well. It's not just, oh, I won't attack you or whatever.
Yeah,
It's, somebody plays a spell, I play the first half of I play Sanguine Bond, and you say, oh, in response, and the fear in their eyes, just let it simmer for a moment,
simmer.
and then you say, oh, you know what, actually, I'm going to let it resolve. And they
Mm,
think that you've given them,
yeah,
you could have done something about it,
yeah.
but you could,
Lots of ways to
lots of ways
politic
to,
your way around a
It's
game of
not just
Magic.
about the cards that you have on the field.
Yeah,
You can interact with people as a player
yeah.
and, do
Make
you think?
make people think you have cards you don't have just because it's fun. All right, boys and girls, nerdlings and nerd adept, we are moving into the final section of our podcast today. We're keeping
Been a
this in, and
doozy.
I don't even
Been
care.
a real doozy.
It's been a doozy. Consistency and cleanup. This is kind of really where we just want to wind down the last key steps of being an intermediate player, starting with knowing how to properly build a deck. As an intermediate player, you should have some understanding of what works, what doesn't,
Yeah.
how certain color combos work together, how some color combos should not work together, and really be able to build a consistent package for ramp, creatures, whatever win con you're going for. That's really what being an intermediate player and starting to get the most out of Magic comes down to. Once you've got your deck built, once you're kind of in an understanding of how to upgrade a precon from our basic episode or build your own decks at a intermediate level, once you have that down, you should also know how your deck triggers and what kind of tokens you need and what kind of counters you need and poison and
Tools of
life.
the trade.
Tools of the trade,
Yeah.
exactly. and knowing how to manage that.
Yeah. So you're going to be tracking several things as an intermediate player. If somebody is playing Infect at the table, if somebody hits you with their commander, you're going to need to track in all of this stuff. It's your responsibility. You've kind of exited the grace period now. You should have your own life total, unless somebody is using, the app that everybody has for life totals.
And we do highly recommend at Nerd Home the use of some form of digital tracking. It does clean things up
it's
a
way
lot.
easier. If you have your dice sat in front of you, okay, I have 40 life, and somebody slams the table and knocks your dice over. Oh no, I can't remember what life total I was at.
Yeah.
Can't remember how much commander damage somebody's done to me. It's easier. It's what we recommend, but you are going to be needing to track multiple separate instances.
Even things such as -1/1 counters become maybe a little bit more prevalent to track at an
Things,
intermediate
if it
level.
says until the end of turn, you're going to need to remember that.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot. What we're saying
Board-wide
here, guys.
effects.
What we're saying here is there's a lot to track. As an intermediate player, you should really be advancing your knowledge of how to track your board and how to coach other people to track around your deck. If you are playing an infect deck where you are giving out poison tokens, you need to be aware. Maybe not everybody at the table you're playing with has played with a poison token based deck before, and you're going to maybe need to be able to coach people through how your deck works.
You'll be having creature triggers as well that you'll need to organize and keep straight, and remember what triggers go where. Oh, I have 3 creatures died this turn. My Elender is going to get 3+1/+1 counters. Your Henny's going to get 3+1/+1 counters. I'm going to have 3 Blood Artist triggers. I'm going to make some tokens. You need to pay attention to your own board most of all. And
one of the craziest things for me is when John plays something like his Brago deck where he's got an attack trigger which triggers multiple things blinking, which triggers multiple things triggering again. This is more advanced realistically, but as
my turn's going to be quick. I'm only doing
30
triggers
minutes later. Realistically, that is a little bit more of an advanced gameplay deck, but at an intermediate level, you should be understanding what triggers are happening on your turn when you have these creatures out on the table. That's really the best way to...
And how you creatures do stuff on other people's turns.
Yeah.
You have death triggers. Make sure you're keeping track of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, guys, at the end of the day, keep the decks about you and the game about the gathering. Thanks for joining us on Planeswalker Radio.
See you next time.